Okay.
I got the man with the master plan, Mr. Lionel Green, taking care of me, so I'm in good shape here.
Yep.
Yeah. No wrestling tonight?
PCW.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
You remember a guy named, it's funny,
Stevie and Kevin Thorne, I think.
you remember a guy named Ice Train?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, him and Scott Norton were a team.
Yeah, so I played football with him in Canada.
No.
Yeah, then he got hurt, and then I forgot he went to.
Yeah, he went to the power plant from there.
Exactly. So he called me the other day.
Really?
Out the blue. I was like, man, I was looking on the NXT. You got a son named Lionel Green? I was like, yeah.
Hey, Adam, thanks for watching, buddy.
I was like, yeah.
We'll be starting in 1 minute.
Hey, remember I used to wrestle at WCW? I said, no. I said, man, I knew you went. I forgot where you went. But yeah, he wrestled at WCW.
I actually enjoyed his deal. He worked the program with Teddy Long and Ron Simmons there. And he worked with when Ron was working with him too.
All right, less than a minute, guys.
A lot of potential.
He got hurt, I think, again.
Yeah, when he was doing the deal with Norton turned on him, and they were supposed to build both of them through that one-on-one, and then he got hurt, and then Norton got put in with the NWO. Fire and Ice. I love that team.
Oh, that was him.
Fire and Ice. It was Fire and Ice. Scott Flash Norton and Ice Train.
Wow.
Fire and Ice.
Yeah, Harold Hughes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, she put him in, get Danny to bring him to the next Legends convention. Yeah. Get him and Scott Norton. I mean, Norton, it all depends on his Japan, because he was supposed to work a show with Legacy Wrestling or Pro Wrestling Empire in Harrisburg, and he had to cancel out. They had the whole NWO showing up, but he had a New Japan signed him to a brand new deal for 6 months. Really good, lucrative deal he couldn't pass up, so he sent a message he was really a stand-up dude. And he's like, sorry, Harrisburg, I'm definitely going to make it up to you guys. And I was like, that stuff goes far.
Yeah, I remember these two big white dudes walking in the gym. I was the manager of fitness with the house on Austin.
Wow, that's
and I found out it was Kane and Undertaker.
All right.
They wasn't there, they was just training me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're from Detroit, so I was like, okay.
All right, I got it at 11 o'clock over here.
Until in the first couple of years when he was under the Kane mask, everyone knew him as like Unabomb from Smoking Him.
Fire and Ice. I do remember Fire and Ice.
Yep. Fire and Ice.
Wow. Okay.
Let's rock and roll.
Here we go.
Sure, my phone's off.
Bernie, you start since you're there with Lionel. You start since you're there with Lionel.
Yep. I'll kick it to you at DerpyCon.
Yep.
Welcome everyone to the 60-minute thrill ride known as the Experience Hockey Talk. I am Bernie Deal, and as you notice, Michael Lindenbaum is not sitting here next to me. He is about 4 hours north of me in the New York metropolitan area, calling in from, I think, DerpyCon, is it called there, Michael?
Yeah, DerpyCon in Morristown, New Jersey. We're about 20 minutes outside of Brooklyn. A lot more hockey teams up here compared to down where we are. So.
Yeah, I bet you. So you got up there, I think you said Thursday night?
Yeah, I got up here. I left around 1 p.m. Thursday. Got up here around 6 to Jersey City. I got into downtown Jersey City for dinner, and that's actually where I got to see not just Caps highlights against Colorado, but a lot of New Jersey Devils hockey, and I believe the Rangers were playing that night too. So.
Well, you definitely got three teams up there that are all playing some pretty decent hockey, and the Devils, Islanders, and Rangers. And we definitely want to look at this week, starting with something that, I mean, there was good that came from the Capitals this week with welcome returns, but the play on the ice is definitely concerning. First of all, I mean, we had the Sunday night tilt with Connor McDavid in town, and one thing that drives me absolutely batty is, and it's happening again today, Georgetown basketball getting scheduled on a Sunday afternoon in November was very perplexing. I would have thought that game would have been scheduled on Saturday to go with the Wizards game on Saturday night, so they wouldn't have had to do the old court-to-ice changeover like they did on Sunday. And I kind of noticed how choppy the ice was at times. It really looked like both teams had their problems possessing the puck. And, I mean, from the goals that were scored in the Edmonton Caps game, both of them one of them was a net front jam and with Kyra scoring for Edmonton, but then Dmitry Orlov on a pretty little give and go from Tom Wilson knotted it at one. But definitely there was a lot of interesting things going on in that game, and it looked like that Edmonton actually adjusted to it better than the Capitals, which is somewhat surprising, seeing how good they've been at home the last several years.
Yeah, and it's just, it's like the thing that we've talked about earlier. There's just a lot of adversity that the Caps are having to deal with. I mean, the other night we got back Matt Niskanen, but at the same time we end up losing Christian Djoos to injury now. So it's like you get one positive back, and then you get a negative right back at it, which really stinks for the Capitals. But I don't know what else going on with the team. Maybe we never really talked about this. We've talked about it with our good friend Russell at the now newly known as Tilted Ice and Forever Blue Shirts. About Alain Vigneault in New York. Is Barry Trotz's contract status really actually affecting things in that locker room, knowing, hey, Barry may not be back next season? And that could be a cause of concern if that is actually the case for the Capitals as well.
Well, you brought up a great point, Michael, with Barry Trotz's situation, and right now I'm very disturbed with the lack of in-game adjustments. We've talked about that in the playoffs the last 2 years, how late they adjust to certain things. They waited until they were down 3-1 last year to start mixing up the lines, putting Ovechkin with Eller and Wilson, putting Burakovsky up to the top line. They waited till Game 6 of the Penguins series 2 years ago, and it worked. They got 3 goals in the third period, tied the game in overtime. All the momentum was going the Capitals' way, and then they switched the lines back to start overtime, and Pittsburgh carried the play to them to the point where Nick Bedino ended the Capitals' season. And just watching those 2 games Tuesday and Thursday night, and there's no adjustment. I mean, they waited until the third period, halfway through the second period of the Colorado game, before you saw Ovechkin, Backstrom, and Oshie back together again, and the lines thrown into a blender. You're struggling the way you are at times trying to get offense. And we talked about it early in the season, like, they're 2 really good periods away from having a dreadful start. That third period against Ottawa and the first period against Montreal. Other than that, those 2 games were very uneventful, and Ottawa and Montreal took the play to them in both those games. Yeah,
and I was at that game against Montreal, and the Capitals just were on fire. I mean, and honestly, I think the Cavs played 2 really good periods with Montreal. I think when they gave the period, I don't remember now, it's so far away. The second period when they let when they let Montreal get that shorthanded goal, you're just like, okay, now you just kind of went lackadaisical a little bit there, But then in the third period, they kind of played a little bit more sound defensively. Well, Montreal did take the play to them, but they're a lot more sound than they were in the second period of that game. But yeah, you're right though. This could be much worse than what it really is right now. But we're lucky that they're where they're at right now anyways. I don't have let me The tablet.
I got them right here. They're only 4 points out of the first place spot.
Yeah.
Most teams have games in hand on them, like New Jersey and the Islanders have a couple games in hand on them, and then Philadelphia and Carolina behind them have games in hand on them. But to just take a microcosm over this past week, you look at the Nashville game. It took them 17 minutes to get a shot on goal. I think it was like 16-0 before they got their first shot.
Yeah,
but the thing
that
was both goals Nashville scored were deflection goals, were guys getting to the front of the net, and the first one was a direct deflection off of it was a delayed penalty, I believe it was, the first one was off a delayed penalty, which should have been blown dead, but we'll cover that in a couple minutes because the officiating still is dreadful in this league, not just in capital games, but with the first goal was a deflection, a point shot was deflected by Craig Smith, really nice deflection that they had to look at to see if the stick was under the crossbar, which it was. And then the second goal was them running around, and Nick Bonino was on that far face-off dot, got a deflection off of Braden Holtby's initial save, and was able to get traffic in front, and I think it went off of either one of the Caps defensemen in front or whatever, but Holtby just was left out to dry there in that first period, and he made a couple of 10-bell saves on Forsberg that kept it from being 4 or 5-0.
Yeah, you know, there's a constant theme that you keep bringing up, and that's Nick Bonino and bounces against the Capitals.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so it's like
at least I don't have the acid reflux reaction I do when I talk about Chris Kunitz, but that being said, I mean, it's just that first period was very disturbing because the Capitals, they'll drop back off the blue line and allow opposition to practically gain the blue line unimpeded. But every time the Capitals are coming up on the blue line on a rush, they have little to no speed, and they're being met at the blue line by very confident Nashville D, and even Colorado gained all that confidence from the early goal he scored on Thursday night.
Yeah, and talking about Thursday night against Colorado, this is obviously a different look Colorado Avalanche because they traded away Matt Duchene, got all those prospects and those draft picks that we talked about last week. So, obviously, how is this team going to respond? Well, your response was that Gabriel Landeskog had a hat trick. Nathan MacKinnon had a goal and 4 assists. So obviously the loss of Matt Duchene is not really a loss to this team, and it's probably made him a little bit better too, just by judging, being able to see guys like Gabriel Landeskog and Nathan MacKinnon, who we already knew were really good players, really kind of step out and really take charge of the team and really lead this team in Colorado. Oh, and my correction, Nathan MacKinnon had 5 points. He had a goal and 4 assists. Yeah, no, I had that right.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
I can't read today. I can't read today. We were talking before we went on the air. It's like I slept in my car last night, so it's like the things that we do for what we love to do.
Trust your instincts, young Skywalker. But yeah, it's just alarming. 17 seconds into that game, Gabriel Landeskog just practically walks around the number one pair of John Carlson and Brooks Orpik, which needs to be broken up yesterday. I know the reasoning behind it, but if you're, like I said on, I think 2 weeks ago or last week's show, one of them that
I think every
really
show
were hell-bent on having a stay-at-home veteran guy playing with Carlson, I would have done everything in my power to do a Pavel Datsyuk or a Dave Bolin trade with Arizona or someone that had cap room and gotten Brooks Orpik's contract off the books, and you were to re-sign Carlson or play with Carlson, a guy who has played with Carlson and knows his tendencies. Or you would have gone out and gotten in the Chalmerson sweepstakes and maybe made a trade with Chicago or something like that. Had a younger stay-at-home defenseman to play with Carlson. You're pretty much at a point where you've got to play these young guys more than 12 to 15 minutes. I mean, Bowie's starting to get a little more minutes, but Juice at times is non-existent. Granted, he was injured in the national game, but I think I got a stat seeing that John Carlson only played 18 games over 24 minutes last year. So far, through 20 games, he's played 18 games over 25 minutes this year. That's alarming in my book because Carlson is a top pair defenseman. I'm not taking that away from him. I had a couple battles on one of my Facebook groups about it the other night, and Carlson is a world-class talent. He's shown it on the international stage. But when he makes mistakes, they are glaring, and they lead right to goals, and it almost looks like he has that lackadaisical decision-making at times. And it usually bites the Caps when you least need it. Either Braden Holtby deals a save with another 10 bell, or the puck's in the back of the net.
Right. And one thing I want to put out there is you mentioned Carl Alsner trying to re-sign him. Obviously, last season was not really one of Carl's best seasons, especially due to injury. Right now, I'm looking at his stats. In 20 games played for Carl Alsner, he has no goals, 4 assists, and is a -4. Some in Montreal would probably consider that underperforming for the Montreal Canadiens, but yet again, this is also a Montreal Canadiens team that also does not have a lot of offense at the same time. So. Well,
they brought in a bunch of, they overhauled that D up in Montreal, and it made absolutely no sense. I mean, like you just said, they didn't address what they needed, and that was scoring. They had brought in Jonathan Duran, but how much better that team would be if they had Sergachev on the blue line playing with a Shea Weber instead of going out there and going and getting a Carl Alsner. I mean, that was kind of a surprising move because we all thought
he was going to go to Calgary.
Calgary or Edmonton.
Yeah, like I seriously pegged him for Calgary or Edmonton because that's where he's from. So one would have thought that he would have gone out there. But yeah, no, but I mean, but not only that, but the fact that that Montreal just kind of let Alexander Radulov walk to Dallas during the offseason too as a free agent, that comes back and bites him in the butt a little bit. Because, I mean, you have Duran and then you have Radulov with him. That's a little extra. That's a 1-2 punch right there for scoring. That can help out your team a little bit. But they didn't do it. They let him. They let Radulov walk, and they did, like you said, the Sergachev for Duran trade.
Yep, I mean, I pegged Sergachev as being a blue chip guy that has paid off in spades. He's one of the underrated reasons why Tampa Bay's 15-2-2 right now. Yeah, all the headlines are Kucherov and Stamkos and Nemestikov and Hedman and Vasilevsky's taking the number 1 role, but Mikhail Sergachev's development into him and Clayton Keller, I think, are your front runners for Rookie of the Year right now, in my eyes.
Oh yeah. I mean, and there's probably so many more young talents that are out there that are deserving of consideration too. But yeah, the 3 that you just named, hands down, right now, if the season ended today, it would be those 3 in the top 3 for the Calder Trophy. Switching gears just for a little bit, Bernie. You want to go down on the farm real quick and see how the Hershey talk about how the Hershey Bears are going?
Well, I'll tell you about the Hershey Bears is they have gotten healthy. Phoenix Copley has gotten healthy. Vanacek's gotten healthy. This team is starting to roll. They won again last night in Providence, 4-1. Matthias Bau, all 6'7" of him, that actually got into one of the late preseason games for the Capitals, had a 2-goal night. This guy is a mountain. I think he's from Switzerland, I think he is. But Chris Bork is leading the league in scoring. And I have said countless times that if they had him on a 2-way contract, he would be a Washington Capital right now because the guy, he's not the fastest, he's not the biggest. The guy is a hockey player, and I think he's going to be a big asset for Team USA in the Olympics over in South Korea in a couple months. He can play your power play. He can play a second unit power play, first unit power play for the Olympic team. He can play left wing. He knows all situations, shorthanded power play. The guy just is a hockey player. Obviously, I mean, being the son of Ray Bork, you're a hockey rink rat. I mean, to have 24 points in 17 games, he's, I think, tied for the league in scoring last year. I mean, the guy knows how to put pucks in the net, and he knows how to win. 3 Calder Cups. That's no joke either. And like I said, they won 5 out of 6, 3 in a row on the road. They play again, I think, tomorrow afternoon at the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence, 1 o'clock face-off. If you're up in the Northeast area, want to see some good hockey. Granted, people have been watching football, but if you want to see some good minor league hockey and take the kids out for a good time. That's a good place to go see it in the greater Rhode Island area. So Hershey's starting to get their stuff together. Grayovac down on the long-term loan this week. He's starting to get healthy. He had a goal and an assist in his first 2 games down there, so it looks like he's getting his game in shape. So things are turning around down there. Guys are starting to get healthy. Guys are getting back slotted to where they need to be. Hopefully that's a recipe that the Washington Capitals can draw on starting tonight with a 4-game homestand.
Right. And then real quick, going into the National Women's Hockey League, last Saturday, November 11th at the Harbor Center, the Buffalo Beauts defeated the Boston Pride 5-3. This was their banner-raising night for them. Buffalo featured scoring from Kaylin Sroka, Taylor Accorsi, Maddie Elia, Corinne Bowie. Taylor Accorsi got a second goal, and for Boston, they got goals from Haley Skarupa, Jillian Dempsey, and Mary Parker. Then going into the second game of the day, you had the Metropolitan Riveters going over the Connecticut Whale 5-1. So they're now 3-0 this season. Connecticut got a goal by Casey Anderson. However, Metropolitan Riveters would get their goals from Jenny Ryan, Rebecca Russo, Lauren Wash, Tatiana Rafter, and actually Rebecca Russo would have 2 goals herself. Going into this week, tonight in Buffalo, you have the Metropolitan Riveters at the Buffalo Beauts at the Harbor Center at 7:30 p.m. And tomorrow at 2:30 p.m., you have the Boston Pride at the Connecticut Whale. And, of course, go figure, Bernie, when I'm about 20 minutes away from Newark, where the Metropolitan Riveters play, they're in Buffalo.
They're on the road.
Irony.
Yeah, one of those times you're going to be able to hit it just right, and you're going to be able to enjoy some quality Metropolitan Riveters action. Hopefully, it'll slide up where the Connecticut Whale are in town. You'll be able to maybe do a face-to-face interview with Anya.
Oh, yeah, it's like just
talk about more about the state of the league. So that would be actually almost an ideal situation.
Oh, speaking of that, I mean, I do believe we are taking next week off for the holiday.
Yeah.
Maybe a comeback from the holiday. Maybe we can arrange something like that. Good, Bernie.
Yeah, we'll see what we do. I mean, there's a lot of good things out there. I just got wind that there's a great new book out on the bookshelves by a good friend of mine, Ben Ravy, who does a lot of the pre and post for the Washington Capitals Radio Network. He has a book out, 100 Things to Do for a Caps Fan Before You Die, and it definitely sounds like great reading. Maybe I'll be able to scarf up a copy and take a look at it and do a little review on it as well. But knowing Ben and his vast knowledge of the game of hockey, I know that's going to be a quality read. But like you mentioned, we're not going to be live next week due to the Thanksgiving weekend. And as always, like to thank WBGR Sports Network, which you can see my beautiful face on the Facebook Live feed. Lionel Green is just a true gentleman and a visionary and a great business person as well, and he knows what he wants, how he wants it, and he's going to be flourishing with many, many great things coming his way, and just allowing us to be able to talk the great sport of hockey for an hour every week is just a blessing, and a big thank you as always, and I give thanks to Lionel Green and his son Lionel Jr., his wonderful wife Leslie, and the whole Green family of just being able to just be good people, and of course Lionel giving us the chance to speak hockey every Saturday morning.
Right. And then, of course, ladies and gentlemen, we were hoping, as we also announced, that we were going to have Russell on the show this week. However, due to reasons, scheduling conflicts, Russell is not able to be on today. However, I believe I'll probably have it up either Monday or Tuesday. Last night here at DerpyCon, Russell and I got to sit down and recorded our Patreon exclusive episode. We talk about the Hockey Hall of Fame, which Bernie, you and I will be talking about really soon because that happened this past week on Monday with the inductions.
Tremendous ceremony. Yeah,
we talked about the Hall of Fame, players that we think should be in the Hall of Fame that haven't been put in yet, that have been eligible for a while. Talked a little Rangers, little Caps, more about the rest of the league itself, especially Vegas and their goalie situation, which is very dire right now for them. So, that will be this early part of the week. I'll be having that episode out for everyone to see. So go to patreon.com/TXHT_hockey and become a member of the community to get that episode. And also, Russell Explains Why is no longer Full Tilt New York Rangers blog, but now Tilted Ice and Forever Blue shirts. So
that sounds, definitely good stuff right there. Russell's always good to a lot of information on the New York Rangers, and just like George gives us good info on a very hot Vancouver team now. All of a sudden, I think we'll cover the state of the league and of course and stuff later on with the Hall of Fame and all. But definitely a lot of news and notes going around. And you talk about the Vegas Golden Knights goaltending situation, Michael. It's actually starting to improve a little bit, even though they had to play their fifth goalie already. The call-up from the WHL actually got in on the 8-2 shellacking they took from Edmonton. But I read today that Malcolm Subban is being activated from IR. So Vegas Golden Knight fans, goaltending is coming back to health at the right time. They're playing great at home, but they're 7-1 at home. But they're going to be going out a couple more long road trips coming up, and the way they galvanize on the road is going to be whether or not they make the playoffs, especially since a lot of the other teams behind them, the San Jose's, the Calgarys, the Vancouvers, and the Edmontons and Anaheims of the world are all they'll start me getting some guys back themselves and start playing some better hockey. So it should be interesting once we get into divisional play, a lot more in the division games where 4 points are critical as you go into the holiday season.
Right, and then, of course, we had some suspensions this week. You had Luke Witkowski of the Detroit Red Wings receiving an automatic 10-game suspension for returning to the ice to take part in an altercation after being escorted off by an official, which also then saw Matthew Tkachuk being suspended for 1 game by the NHL Department of Player Safety for... Tkachuk actually hit Luke Witkowski on the leg with his stick in the third period while Witkowski was skating off the ice after being ejected. Tkachuk actually received a 5-minute major for spearing and a game misconduct as a result. Tkachuk is considered a repeat offender under the terms of the NHL collective bargaining agreement, and based on his average annual salary, will forfeit $11,280.49. So we had a powder keg in Detroit between those two teams. Which
I think there was 99 penalty minutes in that fight alone. The goaltenders even got together. Nothing came of that. They didn't.
They just kind of came up to center ice and they're like, "Hey, bud, what's up? How you doing?"
Like the Patrick Waugh, Mike Vernon, Chris Osgood throwdowns from days gone by at the Joe.
Yeah.
But there's another more serious suspension that could be coming down any minute with the Flyers playing at 1 o'clock today. Ratko Gudas, that was like a samurai hatchet job on Matthew Perreault's neck. What's your feelings on that, Michael? I have some very strong opinions on it, but I want to hear if you're George Paris, how stern are you coming down on Gudas with that slash to the neck?
Well, first off, I haven't seen the play. I haven't seen the play. So my first comment is that I have to see the play and I have to analyze the video footage of the hit. That's the first thing. But from what you said, he did like a tomahawk to the neck.
He got knocked off. Perreault was knocked to the ground, and as Gudas was coming back through, his stick just came right down on his neck. He got tossed from the game with a match penalty for slashing, and he waived his right to an in-person hearing. So the limit to the suspension is off the table.
Right.
Personally, I'd throw the book at him and make an example at him and put him out for 20 games. Some Flyer fans might actually like that because they're starting to get their wear thin with Gudas's lack of foot speed at times, and I think he's relegated to the third pair there in Philly. But
yeah, I'd like
you gotta get that stuff out of the game.
Yeah, you definitely have to get that type of stuff out of the game. I'd have to I have to see the play, so I may have a better opinion after the show. I'm not going to try to find the footage right now because that's a lot of foot. That's a lot of foot tweets and stuff you got to go through to try to find that footage. But But no, if that's the case and Perot was already down, he goes for a slash around the neck. That's definitely like trying to injure somebody. That's an attempt to injure. That is definitely stuff that needs to be out of the game. And I mean, like I said, after I see the footage and I see what they rule, I may agree with what they give, or I may say no, they didn't give him enough, or no, they gave, or I think they gave him too little. So it depends. But yeah, no, definitely. I mean, there's no reason to be trying to injure guys. It's really unnecessary. It's kind of like with the DCHL leagues. As you know, there's 3 actual leagues within the DCHL. You have the Sunday League, which is what I play in, which, by the way, we lost the championship game in overtime 3-2. Heartbreaker, double deflection. You have the Roller Hockey League on Monday nights, which I referee, and then you have the Wednesday Night League. And, the Monday Night League is like the one where they only care about competition and not having fun. These guys who still go out and play in the NHL still go out there to have fun. Because they love the game of hockey. And when somebody like that tries to take that away from you, that's obviously that has to be addressed and that has to be fixed and that needs to be changed dramatically.
Yep, definitely. But also it looked like we had a couple of big signings as well as a couple trades in the NHL this week as well.
Yeah, we had
Cam Atkinson is a very rich man this morning.
7 years, $125 million contract with the Columbus Blue Jackets. The contract will run through 2024-25 season with an average annual value of $5.875 million per season. So
great signing. I mean, he was going to be one of the big fish on free agency this year from the offensive end. I know it's going to be kind of slim pickings because a lot of the players have been picked off between now. I mean, you still have the John Tavares situation on Long Island or Brooklyn or wherever. Got a fly in front of me. But it sounds like they're more and more, that thing's going to get rectified with a new long-term deal before he gets to free agency. We know John Carlson's an unrestricted free agent come July 1st, so there's still a few big fish out there, but they slowly but surely starting to get picked off before July 1st gets here.
Yeah, and then also real quick, there were the GM meetings were this past week, and the GMs met on a historic day at the NHL's birthplace in Montreal. They used the very location where the very first NHL meetings were held when the league was formed. Doing that, you got to admit, that's really cool, being how they met at the Chamber of Commerce of Metropolitan Montreal. And that's where the league started. Yep. And that's just history right there. And that is just so cool.
Absolutely, and they're calling it the Centennial Birthday Weekend this weekend with Montreal and Toronto playing each other. Granted, the first games weren't played till December, so next month will be when the actual first NHL game will be signified for 100 years to that day. But like you said, a lot of interesting little nuggets coming out of there.
The biggest one is about expansion.
We're very happy with with what the coaches' challenge tweaks have been. So. But I know a couple GMs are actually making little wheels and deals. I saw Mike Camilleri went to Edmonton for UC Jokinen out of LA. I'm a little surprised because I know they brought Camilleri in on a 1-year, $1 million deal, and it
after
looks like
a PTO,
fit in nicely out in LA. But I guess Edmonton needed that veteran center to go with McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah, and Camilleri got that contract after a PTO too. But real quick, going back to GM meetings, one of the biggest things that came out of it, though, is Gary Bettman's cautiousness about potential expansion or relocation of teams, especially the fact that you have interest in having teams in both Houston and Quebec City, which obviously we would all love to see Quebec City. And then, of course, 4 teams needing new arenas, the Arizona Coyotes, the Calgary Flames, the New York Islanders. And I didn't know about this one, but the Ottawa Senators? Yeah. Wow, I did not know about that one. They were never really in the news about arenas. Like, we always knew about the Coyotes, the Islanders, and the Flames. But, the Senators, that's a very interesting one right there, to see their name thrown in that mix as well.
Yeah, I don't think you heard as much of it because of all the stories coming out with Brian Murray's passing and Eric Carlson's injury and stuff like that. But I did remember seeing something about Eugene Melnick actually talking about trying to get a new arena possibly closer to the capital of Ottawa itself, since they play in Canada still, which is a suburb of the Ottawa area. So, but yeah, they're going to definitely need some clarity on some of these situations soon. And Houston with the new ownership down there for the Rockets, having a passion and want for the NHL. I mean, we've talked about it on the show recent weeks that it's a natural fit because the Central Division needs that 8th team, and it would be a perfect 32. With Quebec is concerned, that's more going to be a relocation and possibly one of these Eastern teams, Carolina or Florida or something like that, would be the place for those guys. And then, I mean, Arizona, if they don't get their act together in 3 years, I think they're destined for the Pacific Northwest in Seattle. But it should be an interesting thing what comes down, because I know there's a desire to have the 32nd team, but like you said, Bettman's in no rush he wants to make sure the situation's just right.
Well, yeah, not only that, but you just got Vegas too, and you really want, and it's going to take about a good 5 years to really see how Vegas really pans out, because, I mean, first off, yeah, they have a really good team right now. I mean, the goalie situation has not been ideal for them right now, but when they get Subban back in the lineup full-time again, when they get Marc-Andre Fleury back in the lineup full-time again, obviously this will become a better team again. But, we can still see, we still have people saying, like, oh, James Neal's still going to get traded at the trade deadline, and all these other things. But also at the same time, and on the Patreon episode, which people can see earlier this week when you join the community, is that Russell and I talk about it, and George McPhee may have some problems come the trade deadline because he still has all those defensemen that need to get moved, and because he had the gun to all the general managers' heads at the expansion draft, now the guns have been turned on George McPhee, and there might be a chance nobody may be willing to do a really good trade with George McPhee because of that. People remember that stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we just have to go back with the whole thing. You notice all the teams that were wheeling and dealing with McPhee up into the expansion draft. There's one team you didn't hear from, and that was his former employer, the Washington Capitals. And a lot of stuff talking about how...
Well, and Ottawa, too. Keep in mind, Ottawa did not wheel and deal with them either, because Ottawa wanted to protect Mark Mathot, but because of how McPhee was doing things with the draft, the Capitals didn't make a trade with him to protect Nate Schmidt. The Ottawa Senators didn't make a trade with him to protect Mark Mathot, which they really would have loved to have kept Mark Mathot.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So, there's teams that when they looked at what McPhee was asking for and was kind of demanding for them to protect those certain players, they kind of went like, no, the hell with you. We're not going to do that. That's not what we're going to do. And that type of attitude that McPhee had going into it, that's what's probably going to bite him in the butt when it comes to the trade deadline in a few months.
Absolutely, and like you see, I am here in WBGR Sports Network studios, and Michael is joining us from DerpyCon in the greater New York metropolitan area, and you are listening to the Experience Hockey Talk only on WBGR Sports Network. 60-minute thrill ride is already more than halfway done, and like you mentioned, Michael, let's go to a little more pleasant news coming out this week, and we previewed it last week. And
wait, hold on. Before we do the Hall of Fame,
deserving forwards and a very deserving Canadian Olympic young lady forward, as well as two builders, have made their way into the greatest honor you could get as a hockey player or builder, and that is enshrinement into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Well, real quick before that, because I had this as the segue part, Connor McDavid talking about Hall of Famer Wayne Gretzky, saying that he cannot see any of Gretzky's records get broken. The 50 goals in 39 games, what's it called, the Teemu Solani's rookie goal-scoring record as a member of the Winnipeg Jets. So, and I just mentioned Teemu Selanne. You were just talking about the Hockey Hall of Fame. This past Monday, Teemu Selanne, along with his running mate Paul Kariya, along with Dave Vanderchuk, Mark Recchi, and many others, get put into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Bernie, what are your thoughts? We've talked about it coming up, but now that the ceremony has finally happened, what are your thoughts on it?
This is a really good first-class ceremony, and kudos to NHL Network recognizing the feed going out on the Selanne speech and being able to re-rack that and show it in its entirety 20 minutes later. So it was a really good job by NHL Network getting that re-racked and getting it up before people turned off, because that was a really, that speech alone just made that Hockey Hall of Fame night very special. Definitely one of the best characters of the game, but also when it comes to character, there's no better example of it than Teemu Selanne. And they had a feature on Paul Kariya, Michael Farber of Sports Illustrated, and also the reporters up in TSN. Really good piece on Paul Kariya on how he distanced himself from hockey for a good couple of years, and just recently, I think it was the game they played was the first time I think Kariya and Scott Stevens have talked.
Yeah, it was. It was the first time they talked since the hit. It was also the very first time that Paul Kariya put on his gear. His gear had been sitting in St. Louis since he retired. He hadn't even looked at it. He hadn't even touched it. He hadn't even put it on. First time since he had retired when he was with the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah, that concussion. You want to talk about concussions? It was a shame, because he was someone that I loved to watch play, and you just had to see when he came back on the ice and blew that slap shot by Martin Brodeur, and he talks about he never remembered any of that after the Stevens hit, which is quite remarkable. But also it shows you how serious the concussion thing really is. And, just to see a player of his skill still being able to be recognized by the Hockey Hall of Fame for enshrinement, and kudos to them. He had a great career at the Maine Black Bears, great career at the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, and then poking around. He had a couple of years, I think he had a couple of years down in Nashville. We talked about it when Barry Trotz, talking about Barry Trotz's career. His two most offensive years was when Kariya came in as a free agent to bolster Nashville's attack.
Yeah, and then, he did the year in Colorado with Teemu Selanne. That was the year after the lockout where they were trying to win the Cup.
Yep.
And then, obviously, that was an epic failure for the Colorado Avalanche. And then, he did the few years in Nashville, and then he ended his career in St. Louis. Paul Kariya, that's one of the guys who I watched as a child, and me being 31, and when he played in like the 90s and early 2000s, that was a lot of my childhood, high school years as well, of watching him play, and he was just so great to watch play. And going back to that alumni game that they do for the Hall of Fame, Team North America versus Team World. In the first period, Paul Kariya was on Team North America as a teammate of Scott Stevens, only during the first intermission to be traded to Team World to be on a line with Teemu Selanne. You look at that type of stuff, and that just puts a big smile on your face. And for those of you watching me on the Experience Hockey Talk Facebook page, because Bernie's on the WBGR and I'm on the TXHT page, you can see the big smile on my face as I say that, because seeing those two together, it was just magic watching them as a kid, and it was magic watching them all these years later, being able to play on the ice together. Them seeing Paul Kariya smiling while playing the game, that's something that we've missed seeing too, and that was magical. It was
something about Selanne brings out that side of Paul Kariya. And Kariya was very workmanlike, but very giving of his time outside of hockey, but you didn't see a lot of that. So, but kudos to them. Mark Recchi, the ultimate worker bee, the guy that a team that needed to be put over the top they went out and got a Mark Recchi, and it worked in Carolina, and it worked in Boston, and coming up with Pittsburgh, and just learning his role right away. I mean, he had some really good offensive years, but knowing that he wasn't Mario Lemieux or Jaromir Jagr, or Ronnie Francis, he learned from Brian Trottier, because later in his career, Brian Trottier was a guy that went from being that number one center that all those glory years with the Islanders and Mike Bossy, to taking more of a third line role with Pittsburgh, being more of that leader and guy that can show you how to win hockey games in the playoffs. And Mark Recchi took him on as a mentor, and it was only fitting that he had his plaque waiting for him when he walked up on stage to take the picture before he did his speech. So,
and not only that, but a member of the Legion of Doom with Eric Lindros, who's also in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and one could say, hopefully, maybe future Hall of Famer John LeClair.
Yeah, I mean, being able to be on that second line and be that secondary scoring for the LeClair, Renberg, and the Lindros line definitely made it a lot easier for Philadelphia to have great seasons. I think he was on line with Jeremy Roenick at times there in Philly. So, and then Dave Andrechuk, probably one of the most prolific power play guys in his generation. If there was a guy who knew how to get in front of a goaltender, and his soft hands around the net was especially in Buffalo. He put up some monster numbers in Buffalo, especially on the power play, and then just his leadership role helping Tampa Bay win that Stanley Cup in 2004 was definitely a vital thing for the young guys like a Latavalier, a Saint Louis, or Richards to learn from a guy that was on his last hurrah, and to win that thing going out in style like he did was first class all the way, and definitely a worthy enshrinement into the Hockey Hall of Fame, as well as Danielle Goyette and Jeremy Jacobs. Definitely first class all the way. Really well done by the Hockey Hall of Fame. Lenny McDonald and his staff do a tremendous job every year, and looking forward to next year when Martin Brodeur and his class goes in. Yeah,
I was about to say, we all know automatically Martin Brodeur will be a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. He'll be like the headliner of that group. But looking at people who aren't in the Hall of Fame yet and are eligible, who would you like to see go into the Hall of Fame next year? And I'm going to throw this name out there right here, right now. Or actually, I'm going to throw two names out there right here, right now. Mike Richter, Dale Hunter.
Well, the guy I want to see in the Hockey Hall of Fame is Jeremy Roenick. That guy was a consummate hockey player, and it eats him alive to this day that his name is not on the Stanley Cup. I would have loved the Capitals to make a play for him late in his career, even though he wasn't what he was in Chicago. Still a guy that added a little something when he went to Arizona or Phoenix when he went there to play with Keith Tkachuk. When he went to San Jose late in his career, I mean, he gave a little jolt to that team. So, and of course his time with Philadelphia. Definitely a guy that deserves to be there. One of the true characters of the NHL, but also a guy who gave his blood and guts to this game. And I'll throw another one out there: Dougie Wilson, longtime Chicago Blackhawks defenseman, one of the last guys to not wear a helmet in this league, and him and Rod Langway were two of the pillars of when it came to defensive hockey. Wilson had a little more offense in his game than Langway did, but they both were pillars to their defensive units back in the 80s. So, and Wilson's had a pretty good career as a general manager out in San Jose as well, so he's been very involved in hockey for close to 4 decades.
Yeah, and I say, Mike Richter, obviously wonderful, amazing goaltender for the New York Rangers. I'm not saying that to kiss butt to the people up here in New Jersey. First off, honestly, I'm in a press room by myself in a secure spot, so no audience members are here. But Mike Richter had a really great career with the New York Rangers, won the Cup with them in 1994. If he had been able to stay healthy, he probably would have had at least another 3 to 4 more years of his career to play. And then also I go with Dale Hunter. He is one of the only players in the entire history of the NHL that have over 1,000 points and 3,000 penalty minutes. Because when you think about it, if you have over 3,000 penalty minutes, you're probably getting like maybe a couple hundred points in your entire career. But Dale Hunter was the type of player who can get the 3,000 penalty minutes and over 1,000 points because the guy was able to produce when he's not in the box. And I think a player like that should be recognized and put into the Hall of Fame. So I would definitely say Dale Hunter in that one.
Well, it hurts that you only have really 4 players that go in, and then you have also other builders and dignitaries who go in. So, Daniel Alfred's name's going to be up there. Martin St. Louis, first year of eligibility next year as well. So there's a lot of names in that hat for 4 very cherished spots. But we're rolling toward the end of another amazing show here on WBGR Sports Network, Txht. Fastest 60 minutes on Saturday morning, talking hockey in the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia, otherwise known as the DMV. So, looking at the standings, we're coming up on the quarter pole, Mike.
Yeah.
Before we go into the Capitals' next couple weeks worth of action, what stands out to you with the NHL in general going through the coming up to the quarter pole?
Obviously now it's now that you're hitting this part, especially once you hit Thanksgiving, Black Friday, this is where games really start to matter. But also, as they start to matter, it starts making you regret not picking up the certain points that you should have gotten in the first part of the season. Obviously, for us, we're off for next weekend, thanks to Thanksgiving. So Monday you have the Capitals versus the Calgary Flames. On Wednesday you have the Capitals versus the Ottawa Senators. Next Friday. Oh, no, I'll get there in a second. I'll get there in a second. Calm down, son. Calm down. On Black Friday you have the Tampa Bay Lightning, but all that gets kickstarted with the first of the home stand with the Minnesota Wild tonight at 7:30 p.m. But then also, I might add, that Tampa Bay game on Friday is the first of another back-to-back, which will see the Washington Capitals play the Toronto Maple Leafs in Toronto for Hockey Night in Canada. And, of course, you can also join our good friends, Nova Caps, for their viewing party in Northern Virginia for that game specifically. For more information, you can go to the Nova Caps Facebook page. They do have a Facebook event up on that. And I know, Bernie, you and I, we're going to try to make an attempt to go to that. And then and then the Caps don't play again until Thursday, November 30th, when they host the Los Angeles Kings and one of our favorite players here in the DMV area, Brooks Lake.
Yep, it's definitely going to be a daunting task, and it's crazy. This year, coming up Thanksgiving, is going to be the 10-year anniversary of when the Capitals fired Glenn Hanlon and brought in Bruce Boudreau on an interim basis. A lot of people don't realize this, and I'm taking this from Ben Raby's interview on the radio earlier this morning that he covers in his book. That he actually interviewed George McPhee for his book, and if we ever get him on the show, we'll have him go into more detail on it. But they actually had the paperwork signed, sealed, and delivered for Pat Quinn to be the new head coach of the Washington Capitals due to his career with George McPhee dating back to Vancouver. But obviously Bruce took this team by the horns, and the rest is history, I guess you can say. The Rock the Red era was in full form because Nicholas Backstrom wasn't playing on the fourth line anymore.
Yeah, but that was a mistake.
The next 4 games is going to be critical because if this team is as listless as it was in Colorado, there might be an itchy trigger finger up in the box with Brian McClellan, seeing Todd Reardon on the bench as a short-term fix, or you never know. I mean, you never know in this day and age, and I'll go back to when Pittsburgh won their first 2 cups in the recent era. It both came off of coaching changes mid-season when their team really was struggling.
Well, I'll say this right now. if the Capitals do move on from Barry Trotz, it will be Todd Reardon. No, hands down, it will be him. But there's one coach that's still available right now that I wouldn't touch with a 100-foot pole, and that is Dan Balsma.
Yeah.
So I would have put that on the record right here today. So Dan Balsma can stay away.
In his favor was he was a mid-season replacement and knew what to do to get team fixed. But in fairness to that point, he was coming from Wilkes-Barre, which they were playing the same system with some more offensive tweaks. So he was able to just jump right in.
But then we saw what he tried to do.
And take the team to the promised land.
But we saw what he tried to do when he got to take over a team and get to put in his own system in Buffalo, and we saw how miserably that failed. So it kind of shows you how really good, and I'm using air quotes on that, good of a coach he really is. But yeah, no.
But you got Minnesota, you got Calgary, you got Ottawa. I mean, they're teams that, Minnesota's just coming off a big shutout streak by Devin Dubnyk, so they're playing some pretty good hockey, even though they had a wild one against Nashville, I think, on Thursday night. I think they pulled it out eventually, but definitely a lot of goals scored up there in Minnesota. And then Calgary's coming in, ornery after starting their road trip off the wrong way in Detroit, getting a snowman posted up on them. So they're going to be looking to come back, and, Kachuk's going to be coming off a suspension that night. So, he's going to have a fly up his rear end looking to do something. And then Ottawa, how they controlled the first two periods of that game on opening night before the Ovechkin show started. So, they're going to want to prove that that was a fluke, and they'll have Erik Karlsson back in the lineup. So, not easy sledding, but also bring you to the point that good thing is on that back-to-back is the Tampa Bay games at 5 o'clock and the Toronto games at 7 o'clock. So there'll be a little more than a day between. They'll have about a day's rest between, full day's rest between games. Plus, for two periods of that Tampa Bay game, the Capitals dominated that game down in Tampa earlier this season.
Yeah. So, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. All kicks off tonight at 7:30, the 4-game homestand. I think definitely if any move happens, it'll be after the Toronto game. Because that way, when they make the move, there's 4 days off. You have 4 days off to kind of hit that reset button right there. So these 5 games are going to be super critical, and if something doesn't really click in these next 5 games, I can see the trigger being pulled next Saturday night after the game against Toronto, with them having 4 days off before they play the Los Angeles Kings. And it'll give us something very interesting to talk about when we come back.
Yes, that was similar to when Dale Hunter replaced Boudreau that Saturday after Thanksgiving against the Sabres. So definitely, especially with Barry Trotz being a family guy and all that, I don't think they want to do anything like that around the Thanksgiving holiday. They'll wait until after. But like I said, we're pulling on strings and all that. The Capitals have been historically really good at home as well when they play every other night. I think going into the Colorado game, I think they were 7-2-1 on every other night game. So Braden Holtby's going to usually has a strong start after a dud that he had in Nashville. He has had 4 days to think about it. I think they come out strong tonight. I think the reunification of the Ovechkin, Backstrom, Oshie line perhaps is going to kickstart this team. They need Ovi and Backstrom to be playing together again, and then either Kuznetsov gets a kid line, maybe give Tom Wilson some top 6 minutes. I think he was the best player on the ice against Nashville. There wasn't really a good player on the ice in the Colorado game. At least in the Nashville game, they had pushback. It was 2-2, one of the best shifts in recent memory. Tied the game at 2, and Alex Chason sighting. But they need 1 to 18 skater-wise to come out and make an indelible impact right out of the gate tonight. Get the crowd wanting to cheer for something right off the bat. Get the puck behind Devin Dubnyk, assume we'd see Dubnyk tonight. So it's going to be interesting to see how they kick this 4-game homestand off, because it can go one way or it can go drastically the other.
Yep. Yeah, and it's going to be like we talked about for pretty much all this episode. And we've been talking about it all, even in the off season, going into the season. It's a very, very interesting time for the Washington Capitals, and we're just here along for the ride, and we get to have the luxury of talking about it on the radio. So.
Absolutely. I mean, you got 2/3 of the teams in the NHL have 20 or more standings points, and only Tampa Bay has over 30. So,
yeah,
I mean, we talk about the Metropolitan Division being a NASCAR division, and how bunched up that is. It's bunched up league-wide. I mean, you have a couple of stalwarts ahead of everyone else, but everyone ebbs and everyone flows. I mean, just look at Detroit 6-2-1 in their last 9 ever since they got Tennessee back. Winnipeg 7-1-2 in their last 10. All you need to do is get on a streak, 9 of the next 10 at home for the Caps. They can get back to being the home team Capital beatdown crew at the Capital One Arena. They might be right up on top of the standings when we're rolling into Christmas.
Yep. Well, with that, we're near the end of our time, good sir. So, real quick, I would just want to do some promoting, because I am here at a convention up in North Jersey. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here at DerpyCon in Morristown, New Jersey, at the Hyatt Morristown, Hyatt Morristown Regency. Yesterday, I was on the pro wrestling panel. You can go to the MCW Experience Facebook page to see that, as we did do a Facebook Live. Also on the Experience Facebook page. As you can tell, all my shows have the name Experience in it for some reason. Branding, maybe, just a little bit. Yesterday, I interviewed voice actress Terry Doty, and hopefully sometime this weekend I'll have an interview with very famous anime voice actor Todd Haberkorn, and also maybe some Power Rangers can be on the show too. And also tomorrow we'll be Facebook Living the more phenomenal Power Ranger fan panel live from here at DerpyCon. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to go to patreon.com/TXHT_hockey. Join the TXHT community. And earlier this week, I will have up the episode for Patreon, which will be featuring our good friend Russell from the now new Tilted Ice and Forever Blue Shirts group that covers the New York Rangers.
Well, Michael, you get going there, and I'll wrap up things on this end, and definitely have a great time up there in DerpyCon, and don't work too hard, all right?
All right, yeah. I come back home tomorrow in the afternoon. My goal is to get home in time for Survivor Series.
All right, well, safe travels, man.
Safe travels, and we will see you all in 2 weeks. And who knows, stay tuned to the TXHT page. We may do something live next Saturday, even if we're not on WBGR. So there's always options with us. Ain't that right, Bernie?
Absolutely. Take care, Mike.
Take care, Bernie. Have a nice night, guys.
Yep.
And ladies and gentlemen, with that, I will see you on the ice.